Okay, so hello to all of our listeners. Welcome to Wireless Wednesday number 9. My name is Alayna and I'm joined by my co-host Sandra. And a little bit about ourselves. I'm an undergrad at AUP. I study, I'm double majoring in history, law, and society and environmental studies. And I'm originally from Oregon and I'm in my 3rd year. Sandra, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Sandra. This is my last semester at AUP as an undergrad. I'm majoring in International Comparative Politics and I'm minoring in Computer Science. And I'm from France.
Nice, nice. We always like to do the little location, like where you're from. So today's theme for our Wireless Wednesday is safety in Paris. And so we have 2 of our safety specialists here today. We have the Dean of Student Development, Kevin Fore, and we also have our Vice President for Safety, Operations, and Student Services, Marc Montheard. And so with that, how about we pass it to you and allow you guys to introduce yourselves. So how about let's start with Kevin. Do you want to do a brief introduction? What's your role at the university? What does it consist of? How long have you been in that position, and maybe how you got to AUP?
Okay, so I'm the Dean of Student Development, as you said. I've been at AUP for, I guess it's been about 16 years now. Marc and I have worked together during that entire time. We are responsible for the student development team, which is under that umbrella. You have a lot of different units, including the health office, counseling, the student development help desk, all of these things, which actually kind of come together around the theme of safety. And so I think we'll be talking about that a little bit more as we go along today.
And Marc, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Marc Montheard. I'm from France. I've been at AUP for more than 30 years. And I sort of take care of the student services division, the student affairs division that includes student development, but also other aspects of student life, as well as security at large for the campus.
Thank you, guys. So now that we introduced all of us, we can start the grilling time. We're going to ask you some questions. So maybe we'll start with a basic one. Is a lot of parents, I think, wonder about that. Does AUP have some sort of like 24/7 support for any emergency, medical or any type of emergency for students?
Want to start, Marc?
The answer is yes, and it depends on the nature of the emergency. We have a partnership with International SOS. It's a wonderful organization that allows students to have a place to call 24/7 for any kind of medical emergency mostly. It doesn't limit itself to medical, but that's where we ask students to reach out to, particularly outside of business hours. So I'll let Kevin explain what we have in terms of medical assistance, but take a weekend, for instance, when the office is closed, students still have access to International SOS. We covered that during orientation. We asked students to download the phone app, and the phone app just allows you to swipe and be directly in line with International SOS. You can be in touch with a nurse, with a doctor. You can be in touch with a security specialist, depending on your emergency. Now, we also have a hotline, which is only an emergency hotline, and that will allow students to directly be in touch with a member of the AUP staff who's going to be on duty 24/7. And this is, I insist, only for emergencies. And the number of the hotline is at the back of the ID card. Kevin, do you want to develop what we have in terms of inside support for medical emergencies?
Sure, yeah. So, we're a small university and our team is pretty dynamic, working together. We have in the health office 2 staff members who are available essentially, as Marc said, during normal office hours. But when there's an emergency over the weekend, International SOS will send us an alert as well, and that goes to the health office in order for the health office to be able to follow up with the student, let's say on Monday morning. And then if necessary, Marc and I can also intervene, and we often are in contact over the weekend regarding student cases. So in addition to this outside partner, International SOS, and our hotline number that Marc spoke about, he and I are also kind of keeping an eye on the situation throughout the week, and that includes the weekends and in the evenings.
Let me add one thing, Kevin, and it's true that Kevin and I keep an eye on our students, because that's the nature of the institution. And it does happen that we end up being, going to the hospital sometime in the middle of the night for, cases too that are emergencies and cases where we can be useful. So if our presence is not necessary and is not useful, there's no point for us to add to the confusion. But whenever this is necessary, we do that, and we're going to be in touch with parents and try to facilitate the dialogue between parents and the hospital, for instance, when parents cannot come to Paris.
Yeah, and I always like to add that I've used International SOS, and it's really so simple and very user friendly, and like my whole situation got taken care of. But I just like to add that because a lot of parents do wonder, like AUP is in a city, and like being an AUP student comes with a lot more individual responsibility than I would say other universities, just because of the aspect of being, so independent. And so I always like to add that, yes, International SOS is an actually, like sturdy resource to use. And I've used it before and always had a great experience. So I like to add.
Since we're talking about that, International SOS is obviously there for emergencies, but they're also there just if a student wants to call for advice, because they have doctors on their team. They can provide travel advice, really a whole range of services. And so we encourage our students to call them anytime for either something that's really important or just to ask a question.
And also what's really interesting with International SOS is that if there's something happening somewhere and they know that your location, they will send you messages and be like, oh, be careful, this is happening there. And so like that, you kind of plan your day accordingly and not go toward those issues that there might be. You kind of already start to answer that question, Marc, but what is the whole protocol to let parents know what's going on with their kids? So let's say there's a kid at the hospital, you said you facilitate, but like, can you kind of run through the whole process of like how you get in touch and how often you keep in touch, or if there's after you pass the parent's case to someone specific, or who is kind of keeping that contact with the parents?
Sure. So obviously every case is different. What is clear is that we're going to try and keep the parents in the loop whenever we can. And it depends, for instance, if the student is in a state of, being able to call the parents, we're going to encourage the students to call the parents to reassure them. If the student is not, then we will take the initiative to do that so that, the parents know what's going on. Now, as I said, every case is different. Every emergency is different. And we have medical emergencies. We have all sorts of emergencies. And we also have to live with FERPA. And I will let Kevin explain in case, for instance, of a mental health emergency, what happens. But we try and we have to respect FERPA, which are privacy laws, of course, we do that. But there are cases when we feel that FERPA does not prevent us from reaching out when there is a specific danger. But Kevin is more aware of all that than I am on a daily basis. So Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, I think the guiding principle is that our first point of contact is with our students. And we're in touch with our students on a daily basis, and we help them to take the lead and either seeking support or also reaching out to their families. If and in the vast majority of cases, that's exactly what happens, right? The students are in touch with their parents, or if they have trouble getting through to the parents, we help to facilitate that communication. Certainly, if there's something that's happening at the hospital. Excuse me. The one incidence where we'll reach out, whether the student is in agreement or not, is if we're worried about if it's kind of a life and death situation. And there we will immediately reach out to the parents, even if we haven't had a chance to get a confirmation from the student, basically. There's usually never a problem with this. Marc and I are always available to speak with parents. And we also have a parent relations office whom we work with quite a bit. And so there's a contact who can be in touch kind of on that side, and they're based in the United States. So that also allows us in a way to have that 24/7 coverage that we were talking about too, because we're on different continents. So I think that parents feel very supported. We on our side, our target audience is our students, and on the parent relations side, it's the parents, and then we work closely together to kind of make sure the communication is flowing properly.
Great. And if you say you encourage first the student to like get in touch and everything, if you see the student is not really willing to, like, would you breach that already and try to like warn them and be like, hey, try to get in touch with your son? How does that work in the sense, because it's a little touchy?
I think this is where Marc was talking about FERPA. Also.
So it's a FERPA one, okay.
So we're dealing with adults. Our students are adults, and you can imagine when we talk about safety and health, we're talking about a whole range of different issues, sometimes very personal things. And so we respect the student's right not to wish to share certain information. Again, when we're worried about a student's life, then we'll intervene. And that's the one situation where we'll intervene and reach out to a family member or to a parent, whether the student agrees or not. Otherwise, it's really more about a conversation about how are they doing? What kind of support do they need? We have a whole range of support services that we'll probably talk more about today, and ensuring that they're getting the proper support that they need. And if it seems to us that it's appropriate that they reach out to their parents or their family, we'll encourage them to do that. And we have guidance counselors who are on hand to have these conversations. Marc and I also have these conversations with students.
Yeah, we already had a Wireless Wednesday on the whole like safety with health and with actually Anne-Laure and Pam. So we went over that. I think it was the number 7. If you guys need to go back and watch it, it was number 7. But yeah, no, it's we definitely have a lot of support on campus with any type of emergency or health issue or mental health issue we may have. So it's we have great resources to use. Now let's, sorry.
Can I add one thing really quick?
Yes.
For situations that maybe aren't an emergency, but where you do need some guidance, maybe some immediate guidance. Yes, International SOS is a great resource and I highly recommend using that. Another great thing is, and I know Marc and Kevin, you work closely with the incoming students during orientation, but students have been a student advisor their first semester at AUP. And so any questions, I mean, obviously I would suggest that emergencies are handled with more urgency, but if there's any other like, kind of general questions, they can always reach out to their student advisor for those questions as a first place to touch base. And then if it needs further explaining or anything, the student advisor can point them in the right direction, because the student advisors also know about International SOS. They're trained about the health office, things like that. So they kind of know which resources to point the student towards. Sorry to interrupt there, Sandra.
No, you did well. Like, you needed to come at some point anyway, so that was a perfect timing. Now let's talk about more like, if we have an emergency on campus, like what type of plan or what is put in place at AUP to manage any type of emergency, either a fire drill or something a little bit more dramatic. What do we have?
Okay, so we have a range of things in place. You mentioned fire drills. These are by far statistically the most common problems that anyone can have in life. And we also, of course, respect legislation that is French legislation that imposes on any building that receives public, which is the case of campus. It receives a lot of people, and faculty, staff, and students are considered as public in that sense. We conduct drills every semester. Every single building has a procedure. We have sirens, we have alarms, and we follow certain patterns so that people get to know what to do in a situation of fire. And of course, not everybody might be impacted because we cannot do, fire drills every 3 minutes, but the idea is that enough people will know exactly what to do in case of a problem so that they can guide everybody. We also do lockdown drills. Although it's very unlikely that AUP would be the target of such an attack, it's always a possibility. And we have put in place a system of safe rooms. We have put in place a system of text, mass text messaging and information to students so that they would know what they're supposed to do in case of such an incident. So at the beginning of each semester, starting with orientation for incoming students, but at the beginning of each semester, we do information. I send an email to all students explaining the different procedures, asking them to be in touch with their faculty members. The faculty members know exactly where the safe rooms are and how to get to those safe rooms in case of an emergency. And then we will do a drill every semester for every building in the same way we do that for fire drills. We do a lockdown drill, whose purpose is to basically allow people to experience the procedure and know what to do if it were to be a real case and not just a drill.
And how do you ensure the security of each building? Like, is there any I don't know, like a way to scan a card, or do you have any guards or anything like that?
So we have decided that we wanted to secure as much as possible campus without making it Fort Knox or something like you've got to go through a series of checks and we want everybody to feel at home, to feel comfortable on campus, but we also want everybody to feel safe. So we have turnstiles to enter the buildings. Students have to swipe their ID card, and we have random, safety guards that will check your bags. And at any point you can be asked to show your card to make sure that the card is your card and the photo corresponds to the person who holds the card, and so on and so forth. So once again, the idea is to make sure that everybody can feel comfortable inside the campus. But once again, it's very unlikely that such a thing happened, but it's our responsibility to make sure that if it were to happen, we would be ready and to try and avoid by being, showing deterrent against such an action.
Yeah, I know when we do campus tours, Sandra and I feel like especially the parents are always like, oh, nice, I love the turnstiles and the guards. Like it just feels, it's that extra layer of, feeling safe and secure and stuff, especially in a big city, So we always appreciate those those safety measures.
Sorry, Sandra, but one thing is worth noting is that in France we have legislation that limits the availability of guns tremendously. Okay, so I'm not saying it's never going to happen to us, and there have been in the past. Unfortunately, evidence that the violence can happen in France and can happen in Paris. But Paris is very safe city, all things considered, and we do not have, as I said, a lot of people who have access to guns, and therefore it sort of it helps us in maintaining that peaceful quality of the campus and safe quality of the campus.
On a lighter note, I would like to add that we have a fire station right around the corner of one of two of our buildings. So that's already like a big help if there's anything to happen, like fire-wise, they're right there. We're pretty like the first one to be served if there's a problem.
They also can provide medical support, and they often speak English, and they're very nice and helpful. So we think of the firemen as one of our partners, basically.
And some of our students have told me that apparently they're good looking too.
We have to admit, when they do the exercise in the street, and if you're in the comms building, you can have a pic of what they're doing. It's very true, but I didn't say that. On another note, again, I know we hope COVID it's going to be in the past pretty soon, but if there's anything that we've talked today and that might be impacted by some rules that you guys installed since COVID happened, or is it pretty much the same, or do we have something extra? How do you facilitate the COVID situation with everything else?
So you know, safety rules are what we've talked about. It's going to be always there. Now, COVID happened, and the university decided to follow precisely the French authorities' guidance and rules and procedures. So, of course, since COVID started in France, we followed certain protocols that have been vetted at different levels of the university, and that includes extra cleaning, that includes gel, that includes wearing a mask, that includes social distancing, and also limiting access to campus and limiting access to the classrooms based on the recommendations, and in some cases the obligation that we have to work under French law. So this will continue so long as it's necessary. We are not zealous, but we are very, very careful. So whenever we feel that it's possible for us to release some of those protocols, we will. But until then, the safety of our community, whether it's students, staff, or faculty, is obviously the top priority for us.
I would add, there's a component of this which is health related once again. And so the health office takes its mission seriously. They've been throughout this crisis communicating to students about the latest kind of services available in Paris, how to get tested. If you do test positive for COVID, they have a log that they keep in their office, confidential, obviously, but in order to make sure that the students are getting the support that they need, because part of keeping the campus safe is each of us as a member of the community respecting those protocols, making sure that we're taking care of our own health. And so they step in and provide that service. And COVID, like other safety related issues, can cause stress. And so we also have the guidance counselors who are there, and a whole network of therapists to talk to students about COVID and make sure that they're getting the support that they need. That all goes together, I think, around that question of COVID and safety.
Yeah, and I like that we kind of circled back to AUP student development services. And there's one thing that I actually don't think we talked about in the health episode that we did, and I also don't think we talked about it when Jan came on, who also works in student development. But the AUP for consent training, like that is also a part of safety that we cover during orientation. And honestly, that stays really, what's the word? It's very like it's a year-round thing. Like we constantly are interacting with AUP for consent. So would either of you like to talk about the training, the orientation, I mean, that goes on with that? And also what AUP consent is? AUP for consent. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can jump in there. So this is a student-run group, peer-to-peer, but with a staff advisor and student development that addresses questions of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, consent. Part of keeping our campus a safe campus is making sure that we're raising awareness around those issues. We know statistically speaking that sexual assault is something that we need to be concerned about as a college campus, that this happens. And it's hard to talk about it. I think students sometimes don't know, who to talk to, who they can trust, what resources are available to them. And so the reason we put together the AUP for Consent group and work with those students is because we know students talk to other students. They feel maybe that's going to be the first point of contact. We ensure that they're trained properly. We bring in outside experts to talk with that group. And then that group, actually, AUP for Consent, helps us to train other students. And this is this student advisor program that you mentioned. All incoming students are assigned to a student advisor. Student advisors are trained about sexual assault, sexual misconduct, about our policies, about the resources that are available. And AUP for Consent helps us to get that message across to that group. They have their own website and their own email. And so students can reach out to them directly if they have any concerns about sexual misconduct. They can also reach out to our guidance counselors or to our off-campus therapist. And then we have a whole process in place to provide support, to provide mediation. If students wish to, there might be some informal resolution to concerns that are raised to us, and we have a formal complaint process as well. And then, of course, we work with outside organizations for legal advice, and if necessary, we can help a student to be in touch with the police as well.
Yeah, and what's really, oh, go ahead, Marc.
Sorry, no, I just want to add one thing, is that indeed it is part of orientation as well. And not only through the student advisors, but it's a topic I mentioned in the Safety in Paris video. It's a topic that in a way it would be criminal not to mention. As Kevin said, it's not always easy to talk about it, but this is a potential danger. Remember, we have a young community. By definition, students are young, and these are the prime targets for sexual aggression. And the idea is not to scare everybody, but just to make sure that everybody is aware. This is, on any campus, it is an issue. In life, it is an issue. And we are hearing more and more because of the evolution of society, but this has always been an important aspect of student life. And in a way, we cannot be shy about talking about it. People have got to be aware, people have got to be solidaire, they've got to decide together what kind of community they want. And, whether it's for sexual aggression or any kind of sort of safety issues, we recommend the buddy system, and we recommend watching for each other. And I think that this is important messages that need to be passed on from day one. And our community must be addressing those issues.
Let me just underline, because that's exactly right. And we know, statistically speaking, there's something called a red zone, which is essentially from the start of the semester, the fall semester, when new students are arriving, up until about the Thanksgiving break, where statistically, when it comes to sexual assault, college campuses report a peak during that period, because students are new to their environment, they haven't necessarily made friends. And so this idea of a buddy system, this idea of getting this message out right at the beginning of orientation, it's critical, because we know that those first weeks are a time when students might be a little bit more vulnerable. And we'll be talking with students about that as of the first days of orientation. We're actually talking to them about it now, thanks to you.
I have one last question. We've been talking about, I forgot the word, emergency or security, that's the word, security everywhere. But could we maybe mention a little bit how you implement security in housing? Because we know the first year or the first semester students arrive, they are placed in housing. And do you have some sort of security in place for those?
So this is one of the reasons why we require that incoming students, particularly first year incoming students, be housed through AUP. The idea being that we want to create pockets of students. We want to create, if not a protected, it's not a cocoon, where nothing's going to happen. But it's the idea is that in a given situation, it's going to be easy to make friends, and we will have also rules to respect. We have in the AUP residences resident assistants who are a mix of everything. It's not an easy job, and Sandra, you can attest of that. You're big brother, big sister. You're there to advise. You're there to share your experience, and sometimes you're there to say, "Ho ho ho! Hold on a minute. No, this is a violation of the rules, and violation of rules have consequences." And so, you know, it's a part of continuing our mission of educating students outside of the classroom. And but once again, this is also the best way when you want to go out in a big city. Once again, Paris is a safe city, but it's a big city, and all big cities have got their dangers. And, you know, I'm convinced that having 3 or 4 students going out together, it's always better than having one student going out by himself or by herself. And therefore, what the message is that, you know, if 3 go out together, 3 come back together. And that's the way you can limit the potential security issues that can happen to students. You know, on the other hand, housing or living in groups and living together sometimes is not easy. And but that's another way of getting another kind of education, which is learning how to put up with people who are not mom, dad, brothers and sisters, people you don't know about, because in many ways you will have to do that when you start working, and you will not choose your colleagues, and you will have to live with them, and you'll have to stand by your guns, defend some grounds, be flexible, find compromises. So, you know, all that is, but that's not to do with security and safety per se. But no, housing is an important aspect of that. And as I said, it's not, besides the fact that we also have housing where we have 24/7 receptions, and therefore, you know, video cameras and all sorts of ways of trying to increase the level of security. But so it's not perfect. No system is perfect, but we feel that this is a good way to mix living in a big city. So it's not on campus. It's not a closed campus where, you know, you get out of your residence and you're going to have normal people, if I may say so, in normal life and normal shops and so on and so forth. But at the same time, you have the little cocoon of having a group of AUP students, you know, 20, 30, 40 AUP students living in the same place.
I can attest about the cocoon side. Students like in housing here, in the Musée Residence, for example, they know each other, and it's a way to like make friends. All those people made friends day one. They wouldn't have if they didn't have the housing. So it helps like the arrival and the homesickness and everything, because they are all in the same boat.
And they all speak English, which is nice. If you don't,
and they all speak English.
French. Yeah. So it's nice to have that cocoon, as you were saying. Well, I think if neither of you have any more comments to add about safety and emergencies and things like that, then I think we've answered all of our questions. Oh yeah.
Let me add one thing, which was we also have a help desk, what we call student development help desk. And so, you know, if a student, for example, has their phone stolen or something like that, there's always some place to go on campus where you can get advice. They can help a student to make a police report. They can look at documentation with a student. Sometimes you might have some documentation in French, and if your French isn't strong, or possibly another language, it's kind of a space you can go if you're not sure where to start, and it's not an emergency like right at the moment, then they can give you guidance and point you in the right direction. And we have 2 staff members there who are very friendly and helpful, and often supporting students in situations that are a little bit complicated. So I just wanted to do a little plug for the help desk before we close today.
I call them the jack of all trade, like anything they can do. You go there, they'll either fix it themselves or guide you directly where you need to be to go to get it fixed. Well, thank you very much, Marc and Kevin. Thank you for spending that hour with us and giving us all those little advice and tools for the prospective student who hopefully will join AUP. If you are watching us, have any question, you can email admission@aup.edu, and then they can either guide you or answer directly your questions. And Alayna, do you have a last word?
Last thing is, I think this is our last Wireless Wednesday for the year, unless we do some recording in summer. So, you know, I think we've covered a lot of topics in here, but we have other episodes that are related to student development, like the health office episode, like the Life in Paris episode with Jan, who works in student development. So those are all great resources to get, you know, all of these questions answered. There we go, about the logistics of living in Paris and being at AUP and things like that. And also highly recommend them for parents to watch. I feel like a lot of parents inspire the questions that we include in these videos. So I think that that's, you know, a great resource to have some insight into AUP. And with that, I think we do have a couple more live Wireless Wednesday sessions coming up. So you can sign up for those on our AUP Admissions Instagram. There's a link tree link in the bio to sign up for those, where you can talk to students like Sandra and I who work in admissions, and you know, get like live questions answered. Oh goodness, I don't know. I don't know
I
why.
think that's a sign. We need to stop.
It's finals week.
We need to go on vacation. I think that's a sign that Wireless Wednesday is going to be over for a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and wishing you all a beautiful rest of your day. Happy finals to Sandra and myself. And,
Thank you.
and we
Thank
will
you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.